Hi, I'm Tim from Marathon Mates. We've now heard Tara talk for a number of months about the benefits she's found taking Currant's blackcurrant extract, particularly with respect to her GI issues that she suffers when she runs. On this episode, we'll be talking to Fleur Cushman, who is one of the founders of Currants. Currants is a product which harnesses NZ blackcurrant extract, and on this episode, you're going to hear all about the extraordinary health benefits of this wonder pill. Are you ready to run? Let's go.
Welcome to the thrilling world of the Flying RuNR, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode number 65 of the Flying RuNR podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about the many wonderful benefits of Currant's blackcurrant extract. Tonight, we're going to be joined by one of the founders of Currants, Fleur Cushman. But before we do any of that, as always, I'm joined by my marathon mates, Tony, and of course, my better half, Tara. Guys, how are you doing? And Tony, how have you pulled up after the Sydney Marathon last week?
Yeah. To be honest, not too bad. We had a decent weekend, but our fellow co-host Lucia, unfortunately, hasn't pulled up as well, and she's been a little bit crook ever since. So all that swirling dust has had an impact. And Luch, sorry you couldn't join us tonight, but I'm hoping that you get well soon and get back to that vibrant Lucia that we know and love. So, for myself and Sharon this week, we just had a mini training weekend. We didn't necessarily go into the depths of a long run. We sort of did that last week, but I know I ran 6.5 on Saturday and then backed it up with a 12.2 today, and I'm feeling pretty good. So we'll be back. And to be honest, Sharon wasn't far behind me in the distances, and she's mapping out her next 6 weeks. And I think getting through Sydney was a massive shot of confidence for her with the issues and the challenges that she had. So I think she's ready to kill New York, which is awesome.
Excellent. And Tara, what are we, 2 weeks when this episode drops out from Chicago? So
It's
getting close, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. So I've had a bit of a restful couple of weeks, and Tim's joined me on. He's done a few runs, but he's joined me on the restful week. So but we did park run on Saturday together. We did the volunteer role. So I did park walker and Tim did the tail walker. So at park run, there's always a tail walker, so you're never the last person at parkrun, which is always nice. And at Bunyaville, we also carry a backpack with a medical kit because we are trails at Bunyaville. And I did park walker, which means just new people that come to parkrun or people that just want to walk and have somebody to talk to, I joined them. So I don't like to talk, as everybody knows, so that's a really bad role for me. But we actually met up with some nice South African ladies that have just sort of immigrated over here, and got them through their first park run, which was so lovely. And it was a nice weekend. This morning, or we're recording on a Sunday for those that are listening, we did just a gentle, it was half marathon, but there was a lot of walking involved in that for me. We just took it easy, just sort of on a bit of taper for Chicago. So just keeping that distance in the legs at the moment for us.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, we've pulled up pretty well from the week. So now it's not that far away. So we're looking forward to it. But before we get to Chicago and before we get to anything else, it's that time of the week where we talk about the news. Tony, what's been happening around the world of running over the past few days?
Well, before we get to the news, I just wanted to talk through two things. One was on a recent episode of Believe in the Run. They interviewed Kira D'Amato, and Kira, as we know, ran the Gold Coast half marathon last year and set a new American half marathon record, right? And I just found, and the hosts were interviewing her about that, and then things that have been happening ever since, like the Olympic trials. And I just found it a little bit disrespectful, to be honest, because she talked about the pacer that helped her on the Gold Coast. No mention of the gentleman's name. And then she talked about the winner of the half marathon, that guy in Australia. She talked about the winner of the half marathon being an Australian runner, and who then had her on the podcast, which was for the kudos. And she called him that guy in Australia. And that guy in Australia just happens to be Brett Robinson, the marathon champion. And I just found that a little bit disrespectful. I know we get challenged by some of the names that we read out, and some people may find that a little bit disrespectful, but to call our Australian marathon champ that guy from Australia, I just found was a little bit disrespectful. The other thing that I just wanted to talk about was the difference between a finisher and an event shirt. So last week we talked about Sydney giving out their finisher shirts at the expo, so prior to you running the race. And often you'll get an event shirt prior to the race, but you won't get the finisher shirt till after the race.
Correct.
So for example, London, you can purchase an event shirt at the expo, but when you finish the marathon, you'll get given your finisher shirt. In New York, very similar. You can purchase an event shirt, and then you show up the day after the marathon to buy your finisher shirt. So just to be really clear, you can go to marathons and they will give you an event shirt. And then usually there is a process to get a finisher shirt. But this was the first time in Sydney where we saw the finisher shirts being given out prior to actually achieving that particular status. So I just wanted to clarify, because it may have confused some people. But yeah, ultimately there is very few marathons where you get the finisher shirt prior to finishing. And
Boston is one of those, though. Boston, we got our finisher shirt before we'd finished. So
And Berlin was the same. We got ours at the in the airport.
Yeah, we did. We got our finisher shirt.
But because were they selling it?
No, you picked it up with your bib at the at Berlin.
Yeah.
You are right. 95% of races,
you get it at the end.
Your medal at the end as you go through.
Yeah. All right, so that's out of the way. So Chicago, you guys are heading off there very, very soon. It's about 2 weeks away, I think. And they've just released the finishers medal. Now, to me, a lot of medals start to look the same. I can't necessarily describe them incredibly well. But hopefully our listeners may have seen a version of the medal. But what do you guys think? What do you think of the Chicago Marathon medal?
Yeah, I actually really like it. I like the way that the Chicago's been engraved into the medal, and it's like the wording and everything like that. I like the colors. I'm not going to be complaining if I get that, and I will be getting that, because there's no way I'm pulling out. So I've had worse medals for more races. So I'm happy with that.
It's a little bit different, but it'll be interesting because they haven't compared it in size to anything else. So in the photo we're looking at the moment, it actually doesn't look too big when you look at the size of the ribbon next to it. So I don't know if it's a big medal or if it's just a small medal, but it'll be interesting. At the end of the day, it's our medal. We'll get it and we'll be happy with it no matter what.
100%.
It means more to us because we will earn it when we're there.
But you know what? Does it have? It has Bank of America on it. So, like between this and Boston, I'm going to have 2 things with Bank of America on it. I don't know if I'm happy. I don't know.
You'll be opening a bank account with them one day, Tara, no doubt.
I actually really don't care who's on my medal, to be honest, Tony.
If they make the prices cheaper, then because they sponsor, then so be it.
I think Chicago is traditionally a bit of a smaller medal, so maybe Tim's right, but it's a nice looking medal. It's well designed, so but I noticed the Bank of America too. So thankfully, it's not as much angst in Chicago as what you would hear around the Boston medal. So
look, I'm wearing a Bank of America logo right now on my shirt.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some news that Tim's done some research on. There's a new study that shows that joining a running club could help you take up to 30 minutes off your marathon time. And this was a study of over 200,000 London marathon participants, runners who are members of clubs, experience substantial benefits in terms of their running performance. And I think that there's obviously a link that when you're running with other people and you're doing it consistently, you're going to start to improve your times, maybe be challenged. They found that fundamentally male runners have a greater improvement by running in the club, which I found interesting. But it's not just limited to younger people. It's positive effects of club membership goes right through the ages, where for men up to 59. So that's a really interesting survey. So Tim, what did you make of that?
I think there's some truth to it, I guess, because a couple of things. What it does is it holds you accountable to turning up to run club sessions. So you feel like you go there because why? It's a social thing, but at the same time, you feel somewhat accountable. You've paid your fees or whatever for the year, so you turn up and make the most of it. The study talks about it's also the information you get from other runners, and sharing information with one another also helps as well. So I'm quite, when I read the article, it was quite impressive when they're talking about male runners enjoying an advantage of about 58 seconds per kilometre, which is just phenomenal. And female runners generally up around 43 seconds per kilometre in that sort of 18 to 39 year age group. But even above that, once you hit your 40s, it still can be sort of 10 to 15 seconds or more per kilometre that you're improving just from being part of a running club. So I think there's more to it than that, but I think it's you're more accountable. You're hearing different things, and it's not just going out by yourself and plodding, 8Ks or 10Ks on a run by yourself. You're running with other people. The speed picks up. You're naturally just going to go a bit quicker anyway.
Yeah, and often those running clubs will have like a accredited coach or, the wiser elders within the group that are going to be giving you the right advice to help you do better. So, to me, it makes a fair bit of sense that would be the case. But I was a bit shocked that it was like 58 seconds a kilometre. Wow. Geez, I could do with that.
You've already improved a lot, Tony. Don't put yourself down there.
The last piece, there's 2 bits of news that we've got left, and Tim, being Tim, has put the entire medical procedure that this lady in the text, so I'm going to leave that to him. But 66-year-old marathoner qualifies for Boston. Now, that may not necessarily make headlines, but this particular person, Dana Fox, at 66-year-old, has run a Boston Marathon qualifying time at the 2024, and that person has been diagnosed with stage 4
colon angiocarcinoma
less than a year ago. So despite that and undergoing, that was seamless. Did you see that?
I knew you were going to ask me.
So despite that, undergoing chemotherapy treatment, Dana was able to run a time of 3:56.50, which puts him. I automatically assumed that Dana was a female. So Dana puts him more than 8 minutes in front of the BQ time for his age group. So he was diagnosed with the cancer back in October 2023 and was given less than 1 year to live. So how good is that story?
Yeah.
So well done, Dana. And let's we'll all be cheering you on in 2025 Boston Marathon. So now the last little thing, let's have a bit of a chat. We've got Berlin Marathon. It seems, it only seems like yesterday that we were there running it last year. So, but it's on this weekend. It's hard to believe. So what are your great memories of the Berlin Marathon, guys?
Oh, I like the pre-carb load up. But no,
that's code for beers.
No, I actually really enjoyed Berlin. Berlin to me was actually a really enjoyable course. I enjoyed the city. I enjoyed running through. I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed the food on course. I enjoyed the nutrition on course. The people. The weather was amazing for us. But coming through that Brandenburg Gate at the end, you had Haley coming through for you as well there, Tony. But just coming through, it's just such an iconic part of the world to be running under. And you know that you've run under there after Kipchoge has and stuff like that. You just feel like you're invincible running through there. And then you realize that you've still got quite a distance to go to the finish line. But yeah, it's actually really, I loved Berlin. What about you, Tony?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite memories of Berlin was on the Friday night when they're doing the opening ceremony down around the Brandenburg Gates. And, Kipchoge was there and we couldn't understand a word that was being said because it was all being said in German. So, but just the vibe and just to be in that atmosphere was incredible. Less incredible was heading home and trying to get something to eat because there was just, if you hadn't booked in for a restaurant, you were, I think we had pizza 2 or 3 nights there in a row. So, but Berlin's incredible. And of course, after Berlin, heading to Oktoberfest was also a little bit of a blurred memory, but
that's the post-carb loading, isn't it?
No, I love Berlin as well. It was a place that I had no real intention of really wanting to go, and if it hadn't have been for the World Majors, I probably would never have gone to Berlin in my life.
Yeah,
but fascinating once you get there. The history, the dynamics of the city, and you get to see it all on that marathon run. It is a complete circle from start to finish. You finish at the same place you start. And the whole city comes out. Everyone's there cheering you on. And it's just got this really great vibe as a city. Really loved it. So, very many happy memories of Berlin. And I highly recommend Berlin Marathon to anyone who's listening.
Yeah, I'm very jealous of all those people that are out there running it this weekend. And good luck to you all because it's a fantastic course.
Absolutely. And the beers are cheap. And that's the news for this week.
Thanks, Tony, for the news this week. Now let's focus on the very special guest that we've got joining us this week. Fleur Cushman is one of the founders of CurraNZ, and she's joining us tonight on our podcast. So thank you, Fleur, for joining us.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. It's terrific to be here.
Thank you. So just to give our listeners a bit of a recap, as we discussed earlier, CurraNZ is a blackcurrant extract which enhances your endurance and cardiovascular health. We found it very beneficial with Tara and her gastrointestinal issues. So now that we've got you on board, Fleur, with this podcast, we're just going to go forward, back and forward with a number of questions, if that's okay with you.
Perfect. Fire away.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll kick it off to begin with. What's so important about New Zealand blackcurrants that make them the wonder berry compared to, say, other blackcurrants grown around the world?
It's a really good question, Tim. The black currants grown in New Zealand are quite special because they have one of the highest densities of berry bioactives called anthocyanins of any berry fruit in the world. Now, black currants are grown in Europe as well, and other regions, but really it's the unique climatic conditions and the powerful environment in the southern hemisphere that creates this very special berry. And as all Australians and Kiwis will know, we have a hole in our ozone layer. And it's that really strong sunlight, which is terrible for our skin, which is wonderful for berries because it really helps to stimulate these bioactives, which are the pigments that give the berry fruit the deep purple colouring. So the really long summer days that we get in the South Island of New Zealand and the really strong sunlight and the super cold winters, which they need, it results in a really amazing berry fruit that has much higher densities of these, polyphenolic compounds, which are amongst the most important phenolics in foods. So they're great for your overall health, but we happen to have made these wonderful discoveries about how they're so good for active people as well.
Okay, cool.
Excellent. Fleur, tell us a little bit about the origin of CurraNZ, and I guess what was the initial inspiration for you to start the business and with the idea?
Yeah, we need to go back about 12 or 13 years here. My late father, Mike Cushman, was a preeminent pharmacist in New Zealand, and he had a real passion and desire for natural health care. And he formulated a vitamin and mineral range called Clinicians, and it's one of the best-selling ranges in New Zealand today. You walk into any New Zealand pharmacy and you'll see Daddy Cush's range of vitamins in there. So he had a very keen interest in natural health, and he saw some early studies on New Zealand black currants, and which suggested they had anti-inflammatory blood flow and antioxidant properties. And so on one of my trips home, I've lived in the UK for about 27 years, and on a trip home, we, really looked at it more closely, and he predicted that they could have applications for sports performance, for muscle recovery, for cardiovascular health, longevity, brain health, and his predictions have come true. Like he really had a vision on New Zealand black currants, and but we're very much an evidence-based science family, and so I returned to the UK that year and armed with some New Zealand black currant powder, and I approached the University of Chichester in the UK and pitched the idea to them to do a pilot study and evaluate whether or not it might have any potential for sports performance in athletes. And they were pretty skeptical, but they, despite having, scant evidence really, at the time they took a bit of a flyer and they did a pilot study on triathletes and runners. And they measured the effect of New Zealand blackcurrant on lactate across all exercise intensities, because they figured, well, if it's increasing blood flow, by rights, it should improve in performance, but also reduce fatigue. And sure enough, we hit gold with that first study. And the findings showed that it was reducing the production of lactate across low, medium, and high intensity exercise. And it was also enabling athletes to exercise beyond their normal fail point, and it was helping them cope with really high levels of lactate in their system. And so they went, look, we've definitely got some really exciting observations from the study, and that gave us the confidence to move forward into a full-blown performance study. And so it's really gone from there. When we started out and, just our initial findings, the professor who's kind of been heading up the research ever since, he said to me then, look, we've definitely got at least a decade of research ahead of us. And I was like, really? And he was like, absolutely. And then 10 years on, I've said to Mark, so how are we looking in terms of our research timeline? And he said, we've got another 10 years to go. The more we look, the more we find. So it's turned out to be quite a big journey, and, and a project that's just really, taken us to places we never dreamed of, and it's made us realize that we have a real tiger by the tail here. And so now we have, we work with over 10 universities and also hospitals globally. We also have a really cool study with Monash University, which I'm sure the Australians will be interested to hear about. So we've got a lot of work happening in a lot of places, and we're looking at all sorts of different sports and health applications now.
Excellent. And look, Fleur, I actually got onto it not for the reasons that you're actually talking about, but I have, most of our listeners know that I have very bad GI issues when I run. And Boston Marathon in April this year, I actually just made the cutoff by 4 seconds due to having no nutrition left in my stomach from 12 Ks because I took Gatorade on course and it upset my stomach that badly that I could not keep any nutrition in. So for 30 Ks, I was running on empty. Now, Tim was like, we've got to stop this because this isn't the first marathon that's happened in. So Tim has gone and done his own research and found this scientific study that has been published that we're talking about now. But it also goes into the GI upsets and all of that as well for us. Obviously, I know it works, but can you explain how it works in the GI area as well for us?
Yeah, sure. And this is our first look at whether or not it might help runners with GI stress. So this is a pilot study in effect that I'm sure will lead to more investigation. But as you and other runners will know, running in the heat is really stressful on the body and it causes symptoms of exertional heat stress. And this is because the blood is redistributed away from the digestive system to help the body with thermal regulation, which is really stressful on the gut. And so what happens is that the gut becomes more permeable. And you get these leaky gut symptoms, you get a release of toxins, and you get a big inflammatory response. Now, kind of uncontrolled, that can lead to organ failure in your worst case scenario. So it is not only, in its mild state, it's incredibly unpleasant, but it is like bringing down the house of cards for runners because you lose the ability to hold onto your gut, you can't take on nutrition, and as you know, Tara, you can't fuel. And then it is just a desperate battle to the finish line and just to get through the race. So, most runners experience this in some form. But what we've seen is that Currants is improving gut barrier function. So it's just dramatically reducing the permeability that you get in these instances. And it's just really helping with the integrity and protecting against this problem. So we've seen actually that, there aren't that many things that runners can take to stop the problem. And, you can have antacids. There are some studies showing that bovine colostrum and glutamine might help, but actually there aren't many studies showing that it has a real world effect in reducing the symptoms that runners present with. And we saw that 73% of the runners tested in our cohort in the study experienced a reduction in the symptoms. And, I think the study itself was done in unacclimatized runners to the heat. And so we gave them 2 capsules of Currants every day for 7 days. And then we subjected them to running in a heat chamber for 60 minutes. And then we tested them at 20, 40 minutes and 240 minutes after that running test. And so it's important to say that, we were just trying to see whether or not it would help runners in the heat when they hadn't done any heat acclimation training. And so it definitely worked, and it reduced the heat cell-induced damage and permeability by up to 40%. So we got really big numbers there. It's great because we've finally got a study that backs up what runners have been telling us and ultra runners have been telling us for the last 8 or so years, that they're highly unusual. Our runners have gone, and remember, our runners and ambassadors tend to take it every day just as part of their daily strategy. And so when they've been going and competing in world championships in the heat, that kind of thing, everyone else is falling apart around them and struggling to hold on to their guts or throwing up, and they just, they can go out there and they can put down their best performance and they just are not held back by, this number one problem that causes DNFs in races. And so it's really interesting to see that it had this effect in, unacclimatized runners. But the reality is we have athletes, and one great recent example is an American ultra runner called Hayden Hawkes, and he might not be familiar to your audience, but Hayden, he has always had GI problems, even as a little kid when he wasn't racing or anything like that. He's always had a really sensitive stomach, and then of course running and ultra running in the heat has just made it a lot worse and a lot more pronounced. So it's always been a real challenge for him. And he started using Currants in February 2023 after Tarawera, and he has since found, he's tested it in anger during, he's been through surgery for a really serious knee problem last year. And then this year he came back and he broke a record in his race comeback at Black Canyons in February in the States. And then he went to Western States in California in June. And Western States is always renowned for being a super hot 100-miler, running through Death Valley. It's really brutal. He didn't have any GI problems there, and he finished third. And then he used that as really his training block because he didn't feel that he was fully fit at Western States, and he went to UTMB. And it was a hot UTMB this year. It was in the low 30s. And he won CCC 100Ks. And if you look at the videos of him racing to the finish, it's just hard to believe he's run 100Ks because he's kind of bounding to the finish line and high-fiving everyone and looks really fresh.
He did look very fresh, yeah.
And now debrief with him, he just went, I had no problems. I was just fueling like a monster. I kept all my carbs down. I didn't have any stomach problems whatsoever. So he's, I think that's the testament, because he's done heat acclimation training. He did that before Western States. And of course he did that before UTMB. He relocated to France, and he was, getting ready for the race. So it's interesting that even the acclimatized ultra runners are still observing these, really impressive effects, and it's helping them keep their nutrition down. But also we're seeing that quite a few of them are observing that they can increase their carbohydrate intake, that normal amounts that would upset their gut just no longer is. So we've got more work to be done, and actually we're going to be looking and seeing if actually it's helping increase the, carbohydrate tolerance and uptake through the gut, because we're seeing it's doing it in muscle, that it's enhancing glycogen resynthesis in muscle. So anyone who trains every day or twice a day, does multi-day stage racing, the challenge with refueling on carbohydrate and restoring your glycogen levels in muscles is a big one, because most people struggle to consume enough carbs to support their glycogen resynthesis. And we have a study coming out shortly actually showing that it dramatically accelerates this process in muscle, which is, has performance and recovery implications, because it just means that you can come out of that exhaustive session much, much quicker and restore the carbohydrates, so you'll be ready for your next day and ready to go again much more quickly. So that's the very long answer to your question.
No, that's exactly what I want to know, because I know personally, we did a multi-day race, and I'd only been on Currants for probably 7 days when I did it.
Okay.
And it made a huge difference to me, even in that short period of time, and the recovery in between the races, and also how I fueled and no stomach upset. So yeah. That's exactly just answered my question perfectly. Thank you.
That's terrific. Yeah. And I think those, particularly if you're doing the multi-dayers, it's pretty brutal, and that readiness to get up and go again the next morning is key, instead of, dragging yourself out. If you're not so sore, you're feeling fresher, you're armed and ready to face the day again, must make a big difference to you mentally as well, Tara, I'm guessing.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you do actually look forward to getting up the next day rather than going, oh, not this stuff again. So yeah.
not another round of gastro stop tablets and a whole heap of other stuff, and then looking for portaloos every kilometre.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got
Fleur,
more to
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Fleur, I don't get GI issues, but when Tara was waxing lyrical about CurraNZ, I had to look it up, and I saw some of the research around performance enhancement and lower heart rate, etc., etc. So Sharon and I started taking CurraNZ too, and I think one of the things that has happened for myself is that I'm operating when I'm running at a much lower heart rate. So I'm a slightly bigger runner, and I can sometimes put a lot of stress on myself just with the long runs that we do. But I'm now operating in a much lower heart zone. So how does all that work? I mean, seriously, it sounds like a wonder drug.
Well, it's quite simple, Tony, and it's super interesting that you mentioned how you're observing a lower heart rate. So the anthocyanins, and particularly in blackcurrants more so than any other berry, their profile of the bioactives are quite specific to enhancing blood flow as well as being antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. So it's those three key functions which help the body to cope with physical stress. But we have amazing blood flow data on currants. So we've measured the effect on main arterial function through the carotid and femoral arteries in your leg and your neck. And we've seen that it widens the diameter by about 9%, which results in an increase in blood flow of between 25 and 45% during exercise. So it just, a lot of people are familiar with beetroot in sport for improving performance, and it's due to the nitrate in performance that it relaxes the body's blood vessels, but it's the particular anthocyanins in blackcurrant that also have this effect. And so it just naturally relaxes all of your body's blood vessels, which leads to increased blood flow and less stress or opposition in the cardiovascular system. And so your heart doesn't have to work quite so hard. And we've seen it increases your stroke output stroke volume and cardiac output by over 20%. And it just reduces all of that stress in the system. So it's not so hard on the body when it comes to that physical effort. And so also, if you've got that much more blood and oxygenated blood being delivered to working muscles, they don't have to work so hard. And so all of this tends to delay the onset of lactate because you have more oxygen being delivered to working cells and muscles. And so your fatigue point is delayed. So it naturally reduces fatigue during exercise. And that's one of the reasons. I'll get on to the other reasons. So that's, it's interesting that you've actually observed a lowering in your heart rate. We've just published an Ironman study. And we tested, up until now, we've been looking at lower doses of 1 and 2 capsules. And we know that really for performance and for blood flow, you need to take it for a minimum of 4 days. And then it's really getting going by 7 days in terms of the full-blown suite of benefits to your blood flow and helping with your fueling and your performance. But we're going, well, what happens if you just take 1 dose of 4 capsules? We're having a little poke around here and seeing what happens. Wow, more is apparently more. If you have those, it works a charm. And we were able to get our hands on a peak trained race fit Ironman athlete before Ironman Barcelona in 2023. And interestingly, this particular individual had been a low responder in one of our earlier performance studies. And so we were like, okay, let's retest him. Let's give him a big whacking dose and see what happens. And the poor guy, we tested him over 4 hours of constant power cycling. And even though he was super fit, been training for months, he underestimated actually how hard it is to do that in a lab. And he correctly identified which condition, which session, because he was blinded to the sessions and what he was taking. He correctly guessed the blackcurrant condition. But what we saw with him was 1 dose of 4 capsules lowered his fatigue and his lactate by 40%.
Wow.
40%. I mean, it is a colossal finding. And going back to the heart rate, it also lowered his heart rate by 10 beats a minute across the entire 4-hour session. And that's a really significant lowering of your heart rate. So that's a really cool finding, not and for so many reasons, because the fitter you are, the more conditioned the athlete, the harder it is to change a system. You know, he was incredibly fit. He was in the form of his life, being, you know, doing Ironman for years and years and years. And yet just one dose of Currants could go in there and affect such a massive physiological change to his fatigue. And, you know, like it was a really incredible moment when we saw that we can, you know, affect change in really fit athletes like that.
And that's great to hear, actually, because it's funny because our son ran the half marathon at Gold Coast with us, and now he's 18. And I said to him, take 2 of these capsules before you run. I just want to see what happens. No, so it was only 2. His heart rate was down at like I think it was like 15 to 20 beats per minute less for a half marathon than normal. Yeah. And that was on one lot. And he goes, oh my God, this stuff really does work. So, and that was just me let's see what happens. So
amazing.
It obviously does what you were saying as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting that he had that response at that lower range.
And he's only 18. So, yeah. Wow. And he's not a prime athlete by any means. But, I mean, like he runs, but, yeah, he's not like your Ironman type person. So, yeah.
That's very, very interesting. And, look, we've had we've done quite a lot of work in this area, and we've found that surprisingly, we weren't expecting to find this, but we've found that actually Currants helps the muscle to extract more oxygen from the blood. And so you have, you know, a rate of tissue reoxygenation in muscle, and it increases that by 5 seconds, 38%. So somehow it's really changing muscle machinery, not only by enhancing blood flow, but actually helping that muscle to just extract more oxygen and keep those working muscles, you know, increasing the rate of utilization within muscle, which is pretty cool. And we've also tested the difference in athletes with different fiber types. So you have your slow twitch and your fast twitch fibers, and your slow twitch are your endurance athletes. And it has a different effect depending on your fiber type. So if you're a slow twitch athlete, it helps to delay that fatigue mechanism. But if you're a fast twitch fiber type, it increases your power output. So it's a really complex, really fascinating berry, because it can be quite individual depending on your gene type, your, you know, fiber makeup. And but what we have seen is that it works irrespective of whether or not you're just, you know, starting out in exercise, whether or not you're a recreational exerciser, a weekend warrior, or an elite athlete. So we started working with the German men's hockey team a couple of years ago, and they've been watching our research for 8 years. Okay. And then finally, I don't know which study it was, but they went, right, we're going to try it. We're going to try it ahead of the World Championships. We've got a tour in Argentina, and we want to put the whole team on Currants, and let's see what happens. Well, they had a great tour to Argentina, and then all of the players went, yeah, the recovery's great. They, you know, they found that their running performance was better during all of their matches. And then they went to the World Championships, and they did not go in as favourites. They were about 4th or 5th favourite. And they met Australia in the quarters, and they won in the dying minutes of the game. And then they went forward to the semis and met England. Once again, they met in the dying minutes of the game. And then they went to the final against Belgium, which they're their old enemy, let's just say. And they won it in a penalty shootout. And they had those 3, you know, knockout rounds in 7 days, remember. So, you know, recovery is everything for those athletes. And at the end of it, the team, not only did we have the players, but the team doctor, the entire team management feedback, and they just went, we saw such a difference in their ability to maintain their maximal running efforts right up until the final whistle. And of course, that's when, you know, fatigue is having a huge effect in gameplay, and you get goals being scored at the end because everyone's fatiguing. And the German boys were able to maintain their efforts. They weren't so tired, they weren't so fatigued, and of course the recovery between all their matches was terrific. So they went in there with an advantage because they were fresher than everyone else. So that's, you know, and it was great because they were going on social media and pumping Currants and going, stuff, we, just one more, and they went and they became world champions on it. So that was really cool. And then so that's just an example, like it works in obvious runners and endurance sport, but it's really well suited to team-based running sports as well, like your football, like your rugby, like your hockey. So it's just another
so it seems like you've been on quite the journey, Fleur, for the last 10-15 years on CurraNZ. What sort of challenges have you found? Obviously, you've done a lot of research and that's drawn people in, as you said, with the German hockey team. But what sort of challenges have you had trying to find CurraNZ into the market? Because I know when we first heard about it, it was a bit of a challenge to find CurraNZ. We have to go online direct to the website. It's not sold in shops here in Australia. But what sort of challenges have you had with it?
I think number one is skepticism. Even though we've got the research, everyone eyes it with a healthy degree of skepticism, I have to say, because I guess there are a lot of companies out there selling a lot of supplements and they're junk and they don't work. So, it's good to be cautious. So fortunately, we guarantee the product for muscle recovery, and that's the most noticeable benefit. So very quickly people can put it to the acid test and they can judge for themselves. I think we're a small brand. There's myself in the Northern Hemisphere. I run the mothership, and then there's my brother in the Southern Hemisphere, Scotty. He runs the Southern Hemisphere business, and we're a really small team and we have small budgets. So just trying to get the cut through and the penetration is really hard in crowded markets. And fortunately, we just let the research do the talking. But it's you still have to have a lot of marketing and PR to get them, to get the findings out there. So, we rely on word of mouth a lot. We work in highly regulated markets as well. So, that's also a challenge. There's not a lot we can say on pack, and we rely on people to do their research and to find us a lot of the time, or to speak to their mates, and hopefully they take the Currants.
Oh, look, I praise you guys every time somebody says, how are you going? Well, you got to try this product. It's seriously, to me, it is like gold. It is the best thing that I've ever found. And I've been running for quite some time. But this stuff, to me, I was a bit skeptical as well with, like, when Tim found it. I'm just like, oh, maybe I'll give it a try. What have I got to lose? I've been off it. I went off it for about 2 weeks, just due to some medical issues that I had nothing related to that, but where I had to have some procedures done, and they told me to come off all medication. And I noticed a massive change in the 2 weeks that I was off it, to coming back onto it again. It was, massive change. Like, I was like, oh, maybe it's not working. It definitely works. So big change.
When you run out and you're without it, that's when you notice the difference. And I think it's, we're looking at renaming it the feel good berry, because it kind of helps you on so many levels. Like, energy is one of the most common pieces of feedback we get. People just feel so, they feel that sense of vitality. And I think when you're doing a lot of training, it's really draining. Your energy is really sucked dry when you're doing, a lot of exercise. And, so people just notice the benefits on lots of different levels, and sometimes they take it and it resolves other issues that they weren't expecting as well. So it seems to be doing a lot of housework and housekeeping, and it's a polyphenol. It's an amazing prebiotic. Your gut really needs these brilliant plant bioactives to enhance the beneficial gut flora, and we see it helps to maintain the gut flora balance, and really improves the beneficial bacteria species in your gut. So and everything starts there, and we're just starting to really unlock the importance of gut health and the gut brain axis, the gut bone axis. So and your energy is very much centered in your immune health as well, and your gut health. So so we see lots of improvements in our customers, and but look, ultimately, Tara, we want to enjoy our sport. We want to get out there and enjoy our training, enjoy our racing. And if Currants can come along and make you feel less sore, enhance your energy, help you achieve your potential as an athlete and just not experience these horrible symptoms of GI stress when you're out there, doing what you love, then that's job done. Yeah.
Yeah. Fleur, you mentioned the German hockey team, and I'd imagine that for a lot of our listeners, Currants is a relatively new name that many will not have heard of, and you've talked about some of the challenges of getting the name out there. Do you sponsor other athletes? I would suggest the Australian Wallabies would need to get on top of it, but I don't know if there's a conflict there. But what are
I think they're too busy eating Cadbury chocolate, I think, is their problem.
So can you name some of the athletes that as well that are taking the product, and what are you hearing from them?
Yeah, sure. So for anyone who's got their cameras on at the moment, you might see an All Blacks, a signed All Blacks jumper in the back of my office. So we manufacture Currants for Healthspan Elite, who are the nutrition sponsors to the All Blacks. And a couple of years ago, they signed Healthspan Elite as their first ever nutrition sponsors, and they decided to take a tried and tested All Blacks supplement range to market. And so we are part of that. We've been working with the All Blacks for many, many years now. And so we have worked with them. And we work with teams like the All Blacks. Internationally, we supply High Performance Sport New Zealand, the UK Institute of Sport. And so there's, kind of lots of athletes under those umbrellas who've been using it at the last 3 Olympics. We have some great Australian runners as well. We have, and look, Andy Hayden is one of our longest running ambassadors, and he's based in Sydney. He belongs to the Sydney Striders Running Club, and he has been using Currants for quite a long time now. Andy just turned 50, but his extraordinary Currant story is that he has broken every PB across his every distance range from 5,000 meters up to marathon in his 40s. And he's like, man, I shouldn't be getting faster in my 40s, but this current stuff is crazy. And so he has systematically gone through and lowered his PB in his races. And look, he's an amazing athlete. He's been an Australian 50K champion, New South Wales Masters age group 5,000 meter champion. He's Gold Coast Southern Cross 10K, Sydney Harbour 10K. He's won silver at the Australian 100K Championships. He does comrades. He's a remarkable guy. And so he's, really helped us in Australia as well. We've got quite a few runners in Sydney through Andy who just, he's terrific. Anyway, and Natalie Dow is an Australian ultra runner that some of you may be familiar with. So Natalie started taking Currants in the lead up to her Project 1000 in June. And so this was her attempt to run 1,000 kilometers and set a new record running from Thailand to Singapore. Now, she did it, and Natalie also suffers from shocking GI stress. And she also, she's an amazing athlete. She also suffers from rheumatoid arthritis, and some days she struggles to get out of bed. I have no idea how, people like Natalie put themselves through the brutality of running 1,000 kilometers in 12 days and in the heat. And she did it. And she started taking Currants and noticed that helped her GI. And of course, she was running through like really remote parts of Asia where her team struggled to get normal food that she would customarily eat. So she was having to eat all sorts of weird stuff, which is like a runner's worst nightmare. How it's going to, affect the gut. And she said she was fine. She was operating on 2-3 hours sleep a night. It was so hot, her shoes were melting. So she had to change the plan. Instead of starting at 5 a.m. every day, she was starting at midnight. She had to run. She was doing a double marathon every single day. And she had to run a marathon in the night just to escape the heat of the day. And she said it. And she said, honestly, she got up, they went to bed at 9. She was up at 11:30 p.m. to be out running for midnight. And she said she was in amazing shape day in, day out with the recovery and the GI. So she did it, and she's a new world record holder. So Natalie's another great example. So there's just a few examples for you, but we work with quite a few runners in New Zealand as well. Sam Harvey, backyard record holder extraordinaire. So Sam's determined to win a new world, to set a new world record in the backyard ultra format with Currants. And I mean, he's already run 655 Ks. Across 5 days, but he's raising the bar every year. So let's see what happens with Sam.
I'm looking at Tony just shaking his head. He doesn't like long distance. Marathon's it.
Now, Fleur, I understand that Currants has a couple of products available on their online shop. Can you tell our listeners the difference between all the products? I'm assuming that they all contain the blackcurrant.
Yeah, they do. So in the UK and New Zealand, we have the Currants Original, which is our flagship supplement, which is the product that you take, and we sell it in Australia as well. But we only sell Currants Original in Australia, but we have the Housespan Elite All Blacks product in New Zealand and the UK. And we also have Currants Immune, which is our immune supplement, which has other goodies in it like vitamin C and D and beta-glucans and other berry extracts from blueberry and elderberry. So it's more of a broad spectrum immune supporting product. But that unfortunately isn't available in Australia, but it is available at our other stores.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you.
And I guess, Fleur, for our listeners, how do they get it? It is all online to purchase, yeah?
It is. So in Australia, our website is currants.com.au. In New Zealand, it's the same, currants.co.nz, and for the rest of the world, it's currants.com. So we do direct distribution in New Zealand, Australia, and the UK and USA.
Okay.
And Scott, your brother, was nice enough to set us up with a discount code for all of our listeners. So if anybody would like to try Currants, I highly recommend it. It's just Flying RuNR 20, and that will give you the 20% off when you go onto those websites as well. For a first time go. But you can set it up as an auto direct, so it comes out all the time, and you just get your supply so you don't run out, which is the most important thing. Yes.
Fantastic. No, help yourself to the discount code, guys. And as I said, we guarantee the product for muscle recovery. So if it doesn't work for you for muscle recovery, we'll give you a no quibble money back guarantee as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the chat tonight, Fleur. We've really enjoyed having you on our show tonight. And I think we've all learned a lot more about this wonderberry that we didn't know so much about beforehand. So thank you for joining us and for taking the time to come on our little podcast. So thank you very much.
Complete pleasure. It's really great to be here tonight and to meet you all. And Tara, super happy that Currant.
Me too. Thank you. Can't thank you guys enough for the product that you guys have delivered to us. So thank you. It's amazing.
Fantastic.
Now, before we wrap up this episode, we're going to get our tip from Tim. So, Tim, what is your tip this week?
Thanks, Tara. It's fantastic when you find a natural product like Currants that works and is backed up by numerous peer-reviewed scientific studies. I don't think numerous is the right word. I think very detailed and methodical research has gone into that product. But the reality is there's so many natural supplements out there on the market, and it can be quite hard to understand all the benefits. And as Fleur said, there are a number of products out there that may not be what they're promoting to be. So it is really important that you are careful to ensure that any product you're purchasing is right for you and that you understand what it's to do and that it works as intended. But secondly, it's also not impacting your health long term. For Tara and myself, we're very picky about the nutrients and products we consume, and we are very conscious of the effects it has on our long-term health over time. So a product like Currants is pleasing to find that they've got all that scientific study. We've tried it now, and it's been really good on our bodies. But there are many, many other nutrients and natural products out there on the market. So my tip this week is do your research. If you've heard from Fleur tonight, but also go out there and find those scientific studies, have a look at them and see how they go and give it a trial. And if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. Try some of the other natural products that are out there as well and see how they go with you. So that's my tip this week. So this episode is about to end, but before we do that, Tara, what is on next week?
Excellent. So, Tim, next week we're actually going to be joined by Nikki Francis. Nikki is Tony's physiotherapist, and she was fortunate enough to have run the Paris Olympic Marathon course along with 20,000 other runners from around the globe during the Olympics. We'll hear from Nikki about running in Paris and on the course. Running on the course that the elites ran. She'll tell us about the event and how brutal the hills were, as well as what Paris was like to be in when the Olympics were on. And as usual, it's another episode that cannot be missed.
So thanks for that, Tara. So that goes and wraps up our episode for tonight. I'd like to thank Fleur. She's not with us at the moment, but I'd like to thank Fleur and Currants for coming on the show tonight to have the chat. I think we've all learned a little bit more about the product tonight, and it was fascinating to hear from Fleur the journey she's been on with this product and the benefits that it has. I'd also like to thank you guys, my marathon mates, and also Lucia, who couldn't join us tonight. It's been a lot of fun, hasn't it?
It has.
As always, we do these episodes for you, our wonderful listeners. Without you, our listeners, we wouldn't be doing this. So we do love to hear feedback from our listeners. So if you'd like this episode, please like it wherever you're listening to it. It helps us with the algorithms and helps us find new listeners. But also leave some messages or comments. You can send us messages on social media pages such as Instagram and Facebook, where we are. We also operate through Messenger. Or you can now send us an email at Tony. Which email address?
It's happyrunning@flyingrunner.com.
There you go. As usual, video of this episode will be available at Spotify and YouTube, and audio will be on Apple and Amazon and most other podcast platforms. Remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Flying Runner. Until then, happy running.
Happy
Happy
running.
running.